Rumor has begun circulating of a new PlayStation handheld in development, and for people who have been very excited for the idea of Sony maybe making a new handheld sometime in the future, it's a bit of a monkey's paw situation. If you haven't seen this, earlier this week an article broke on Insider Gaming by Tom Henderson, who's been doing a lot of coverage of different potential PlayStation hardware coming out in the near future. He's talked about a PlayStation 5 Slim coming out later this year, a PS5 Pro slated for end of next year, which is all stuff that I take a heavy grain of salt with. But this new report is that there is a new PlayStation handheld in development that would be targeted to come out between these two devices, so probably somewhere in the first half of 2024, with the caveat being that it is not actually a traditional PlayStation handheld along the lines of the PSP and PS Vita, but rather a remote play dedicated device. Supposedly, this device would have a 8-inch 1080p screen with a 60Hz refresh rate, and would essentially be a DualSense style controller with a display in the middle of it, while still offering all the different special features the DualSense offers, like haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. So the idea is that while you're remote playing the PS5, you still are able to make use of all the different special features that the DualSense controller would tend to offer in a living room situation. Which that in and of itself actually does sound kind of cool to me. I'm a big sucker for immersive functionalities and stuff, so I like things like the haptics and the adaptive triggers on the DualSense controller, and having that in a handheld that still plays those same games would be really neat. And something that is well-timed about this rumor is the fact that PlayStation has been very heavily pushing remote play as of late, and so it does make a certain amount of sense that the reason why PlayStation would be hyping up a feature that's already been around and available for some time is to make people more hyper-aware of it, to lead into a tied-in device that's focused on it. It's just kind of a weirdly limited sounding thing to me, both from the standpoint of it being a PlayStation device and from being a remote play device. From the PlayStation device side of things, obviously there is a fan base that has been hoping for a new handheld to come from PlayStation. I myself have made quite a few videos talking about how I would love to see them re-explore this territory. I loved the PSP, I loved the PS Vita, and just in general, I'm a big handheld fan, and so I've wanted to see them explore this concept again. And remote play was certainly an aspect of it that I think could be a really cool additional selling point, just not necessarily the only thing that it would do. Obviously, when talking about wanting PlayStation to make another handheld, a part of that question is wanting to see natively played original content as part of that device. Now, of course, one aspect of this would be to have brand new original games made specifically for this platform, which is something that'd be good to see, but honestly, something that I would even take is if PlayStation leaned harder into having a great digital library of their older titles and make that something that is able to be played natively on this new handheld. This is something I've talked about a few times with PlayStation as they've begun adding some older catalog titles to the PS5. There were so many great older titles available on the PS3 store that have yet to return on the PlayStation 5 store. And if we could have a catalog of that size again for a new handheld, I think that alone would, at least for me, be something that would make it much more enticing. If I could play a majority of great PS1, PS2, PSP, and PS Vita games on the go with a dedicated handheld that also offered PS5 remote play as another major feature, that is something that would appeal a lot more to me. But remote play by itself is just not quite enough. And the thing about it is that there are other devices out there that are focused on the concept of being purely remote play dedicated, but they're not hamstringed by being focused on only one specific platform. For instance, the Logitech G Cloud, which I've made a video on, and also the Razer Edge, which I am working on a video on. I'm a little behind, but I should probably put that up soon. But both of those are devices that are focused entirely on the idea of doing remote play and cloud-based services, but they're open to a large number of them. And one of the things that I think is really neat about those devices is that the value of them increases dramatically based on the number of services you could take advantage of. If you're using it for only one specific service like PlayStation Remote Play, the high price point of them doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you want to use them for PlayStation Remote Play, Xbox Remote Play, Xbox Cloud Gaming, Steam Link, Nvidia GeForce Now, suddenly that price point makes more and more sense, although both of them are still a little too expensive for my taste. Not to mention that on top of having to have access to all these services in the first place, you also have to be paying to have pretty good internet to get the most out of it and have the smoothest experience possible. Now, of course, if the only system you care about, if the only system you actively use and where all of your gaming experiences lie is the PS5, then sure, a remote play dedicated device for that can make more sense because ultimately that's where all your experiences are going anyways. But for something like that to really make sense to me, if it's not not going to offer any kind of natively played game options, it would need to have a very, very aggressive price point. And when you figure that a DualSense controller on its own MSRP is $70, and this is effectively a DualSense with extra stuff going on because it needs to have a display and be able to connect to the internet, it's pretty easy to see how the price could get up there and higher. But as far as an actual functional use case for most people and something that feels affordably worth it, I can't imagine it being listed for something more than $200. And even that feels like something that's kind of high to me for something that is so specific. I just really hope that if this is something that ends up being real, I just want there to be one other aspect to it outside of the remote play angle, whether that's having the ability to natively play some older titles, if not actually having some original content for it, if that's some kind of additional functionalities where you can pair it with a PS5 and use it for some kind of dual screen functionality in some games, just something that adds a piece to this puzzle, because as it stands, it just feels like something's really missing from why something like this could be a lot more cool than it currently sounds. Of course, because this is also a rumor, it also stands to reason that maybe this just isn't happening at all. I mean, after all, in some shorts, I've talked about some previous rumors from the same website for things like the PS5 Pro, which I'm personally still very skeptical about. But when you talk about Sony working on something like a handheld, well, that just starts to strike at my heart a little more because I so want it to be true, or at least, you know, a better version of what this is claiming to be true. I don't know, as it stands, the basic concept here, while it's something I would definitely check out and cover for a video, isn't necessarily the kind of thing that I would be personally extremely excited about when there are so many other options for being able to handle remote play traditionally anyways. But let me know what you guys think. Would you be interested in picking up a remote play dedicated device just for PS5? At what price point would it even feel like something that's worth it to you? What would you love to see it do beyond just simply that? Let me know down below in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, hit that thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys later.